हाँ.
So I will have the pleasure of introducing Dr. Pokharna Sahab, most energetic fellow of JS and very well known to everyone. Actually, he doesn't need any introduction. But just for a formality, I'll just mention a few things about him. He joined ISRO long time ago and worked with the Indian Space Research Organization, and afterwards he joined as CEO in a high-tech company, and now um he is with the SSRI, DS Kothari Institute, Bhagwan Mahavir International Research Center, Latno, and many other organizations. And he is the most active person in our fellowship. So he has been, working with Dr. Nepe and Dr. Close. Um, Actually, he starts with many ideas. He has worked with this uh, Annie Besant's uh, description of uh, periodic table, which was a new thing when he started. And then he worked with these two American colleagues on TDVP model, and he has initiated research in many areas. So I will not take much time except to say that we had a lot of discussion on TDVP, that three-dimensional vertical
Paradigm.
uh, model, and where they introduce consciousness in addition to space and time. And I think we had talks from Dr. Nepe himself, and Dr. Pokharna also gave a lot of a talk on this. And then we had a talk by Dr. Shishir Roy on consciousness, and also Dr. Pokharna talked about consciousness. So we have a lot of exposure on this topic, and today Dr. Pokharna will take this further deeper into the subject. And now I request Dr. Pokharna to give his talk on TDVP model of reality and its parallels with Jainism. Pokharna
आणि
sir.
कथारा साहब ने वो है जो हमने वो नहीं किया नौकार मंत्र.
ठीक है सर, वो बाद में कर देंगे.
अच्छा. Okay, thank you, Bhandari sahab. Let me start. The TDVP model of reality has remarkable parallels with Jainism. I will just go into this TDVP model in detail, although I have covered many of these aspects in the past, but as I am learning it more and more, it is getting more and more clear. So I will just put it forward in a different way today. Let me go to the next slide. I just, as usual, I just dedicate this presentation to my parents and my relatives, my grandmother, who have just actually encouraged me to take up this work. Then I am also grateful to many Jain Acharyas and my teachers, and Professor E.C.G. Sudarshan, Professor D.S. Kothari, Edgar Mitchell, Professor K.P. Sinha, and others who have really motivated me to take up this work very seriously. Now, the summary of this is TDVP tridimensional distinctions vertical paradigm model has been developed by Vernon Nape and Edward Close to find a theory of everything. And Jainism is very old and also attempts to understand nature of reality. These two different formalisms have at least 10 common factors among them. And I would like to, actually, some of them require further studies, but I feel that at least there are 10 factors which are common in the two formalism, which cannot be by chance. There is something at deeper level which shows that this reality has something which has been visualized under the TDVP model and has been also realized by our Jain acharyas. So that is something, I mean, very common factor. Okay, the current attempt to unify four forces of nature to get a theory of everything. In current science, physics is treated as mother of science. Four types of forces are defined in physics to understand basic laws of nature. They are electromagnetic force, gravitational force, weak force, and strong nuclear force. And then attempts are made to unify these forces to get a theory of everything. Is objective reality really objective? That is the first question which is raised in science these days. So as per quantum physics, the concept of objective science is very rigid and completely separates object from the subject. But in reality, this is not true. Thus, for example, in quantum physics, the role of consciousness is very important because the state of mind decides whether someone wants to see the particle aspect or the wave aspect of an electron or a photon. Then is objective reality really objective? Again, under theory of relativity, in the theory of relativity, we talk of say two frames of references, observers moving with respect to each other. Then one can describe the properties of two frames through Lorentz transformation. But again, there are two different frames. So one cannot exactly say that there is an objective description of reality because there are two different frames of reference. So in which frame of reference you are, it will just, I mean, change your space-time coordinates and so on and so on. So, but nobody talks of property of observers or state of their mind. Even here also, I mean. And then more problem with the current science. In case of life sciences, there are problems of evolution which do not talk about consciousness in any way, which distinguishes a living being from a, I mean, from an this of a non-living being. There is no discussion about consciousness in the Darwin principle of evolution, for example. A still more complex problem is from where the life has come and what is the purpose of life and why millions of complex organisms exist at all. Then there is what is known as the Gödel's incompleteness theorem. We have a simple example I have given that uh, these two different type of sweets are there. So if we add this 4 plus 4, then do we get 8? And the answer is that we do not get 8 because these two are different objects. This is very simple illustration of the Gödel's incompleteness theorem. So the most attractive aspect of scientific knowledge is its mathematical basis. We generally feel that this mathematical representation of various scientific facts make our knowledge more precise and accurate. However, from the following theorems which have been put forward by the great mathematician Kurt Gödel, we find that any mathematical representation of any physical reality limits our knowledge of that reality. Not only this, but the theorem also implies that none of the languages or representations can express the reality of nature with perfection. Complete knowledge must necessarily have its foundation in an inexpressed, unmanifest field of intelligence. Then there are 9 types of parapsychic processes which are well established, but they are not covered in the current science or in, I mean, any current scientific theory. I mean, there are very few. So actually, some of them are actually very well established. So they fall in the category of what is known as Six Sigma statistical data. That is 1 billion to 1 against chance. So they are very well established actually. So I will not go into the details. This first is gain field, that is sensory deprivation and guess what is happening around you. Then global consciousness project is there. Then remote viewing is there. Then random number generators, how they can be influenced by some parapsychic processes. Then presentiment, a feeling that something unpleasant will happen. Then BEM protocol, that is feeling the future. Then less than this are the Six Sigma protocols. This called steering protocol, survival after bodily death, and this pre-recognition. So and Six Sigma data. Actually, here it is not followed, but actually these are some of the parapsychic processes which are fairly well established, but they are not considered in the current science. So I mean that is also a problem. Then I mean there are some which I have added. And I very strongly feel that scientists, they ignore it. But the point is, should we ignore such actually phenomena? So millions of people take help of astrology in major decision making. Should we deny this truth? Many people have advanced information about critical events in their lives and in dreams. So should we ignore them? Then many people go to temples and believe that their deities help in solving their problems. Great mathematician Ramanujan had one deity who used to occasionally help him. This is actually being quoted at some places. Then if there is some truth in them, they cannot be ignored. And I just want to emphasize here that all new scientific discoveries always almost start with rare events to begin with. That is just discovery of a new galaxy or discovery of a new radioactive element or a new virus or anything. Hundreds are already well known, and out of them, something new will come out. This is a rare thing in the beginning. And afterwards, we just try to find out under what set of conditions this is actually possible to observe. Then, I mean, it gets established. So we should not ignore the rare events also if we are looking for a real this theory of everything. So we have to be, I would say, little more open in our mind. There limitation of science as applied to biological system, that is human systems and other biological systems. Biological systems are essentially irreversible in nature, that is they grow and decay. So the scientific experiments of repeatability, that is they are repeatable at different space and time points, cannot be strictly used in these cases. They are also open systems compared to the physical systems, which are closed systems. Hence biological and social systems cannot be subjected to the process of measurement, uh, actually to be very exact, I mean. Then in addition, human systems have memory, which makes it impossible to do any strictly defined scientific experiment on them. Then hence the systems are studied in a different way using statistical procedures where only some rough trends or patterns are found. And then there's another way to study them, that is what is known as, I mean, the general system theory, which is used to understand such system. Now, this development will be very useful to understand the meaning of consciousness and spirituality in the modern context. That is, if you want to analyze these things, then it will help to some extent in understanding the problem of consciousness and spirituality also. Now, there are two recent books which talk about limitations of science in describing reality. That is the limitations of the current science. So the first is by Deepak Chopra, You Are the Universe, and he has gone into the details of why this objective methodology is not actually, I mean, a complete answer to understand the reality. There could be reality which may not be objective at all. I mean, then there's another book by this the Rupert Sheldrake, whose title is Science Set Free. That is what he writes is we should make some attempt so that science can be set free. The 10 paths he has defined for new discovery. Now, these are some of the things which should be taken into account when we are just studying this TDVP model. Now I go to actually why they were talking of consciousness this under this TDVP model. I will not go again into the technical details. So Einstein, this EPR paradox is almost now resolved. It was, I mean, a very old paradox. And here, if polarization or spins of two photons or electrons moving in the opposite direction but emitted from the same source are measured in any one of the three directions, then they are found to be correlated, that is plus half and minus half. That is, if one shows this plus half spin, then the second will show the minus half spin, or the reverse. But it appears that these two are connected. So if you take measurement on one of them, then the second will automatically take, I mean, the opposite value. So that is has been observed by what is known as the experiment of 1982 carried out by Alan Aspect and his team. So, and they found that this Bell theorem and experiment of Alan Aspect, so the correlations of spin and polarizations are measured before the change in the angle of polarization and after the change by 45 degrees. The joint probability should be less than or equal to 2 if reality is local, that is Bell's inequality. and it should be 2.7 if there is non-locality. An experiment performed by Alan Aspect and co-workers found this correlation to be 2.69. It means there is the concept of non-locality which is established. So, and it was again actually carried out by several scientists, and in 2015 actually what are known as some loopholes were there in the first experiment, or some guess was there that this may be due to this factor or this may be due to this factor. So all those loopholes were resolved, and actually they were taken into account. And in 2015, this experiment was performed, and they have clearly shown that what Alan Aspect has found is correct. So there is a non-locality which is very important. So these are some of the conclusion of this thing. So inference from EPR experiment: Bayes' inequality is violated. There are no local hidden variables possible in quantum mechanics. Photons and electrons do not exist till they are observed, and one observes only their effects by some instruments. So they may exist as Schrodinger probability waves, for example. So EPR-based experiments show that there exist non-local phenomena and there exist correlations even on long distances at very fundamental level, known as quantum entanglement. So actually what it means is that there is a possibility that there can be non-local uh, a reality. So, and non-local information transfer can also take place. Now, this is a very big thing. And then it establishes the Copenhagen interpretation, and it says that Copenhagen interpretation is correct, supporting the point of view of Bohr, Heisenberg, and Schrodinger, and disapproving the proposal of Einstein that electrons and photons exist. Even before the experiment is carried out. The impact of this research on where information is ultimately stored in the brain. Is it stored in the neurons? As actually, kindly see that I have used the term ultimately stored. So is it stored in the synapses and neurons both? Is it stored in the neurotransmitters, or is it stored in the cluster of neurons and synapses? Is it stored in the microtubules? Is it stored in the action potential and the electrochemical impulses, or is it stored in the consciousness? Uh, so I am talking of ultimate this storage of information. Now there are now this Edward Close, that is one of the scientists, have developed a procedure to show that consciousness has to be non-physical. And what he says that 7 steps in studying a particle. If you want to study a quantum particle that is the subject of the observation, for example, the quantum particles affected in the material registering the effect of the particle being observed, for example, ionized gases composing a trace or the mark of a photon's effect on the photographic plate. Then the photons that carry the information of the effect registered on the first receptor to the retina of the observer's eye. The elementary particles that make up the light sensitive cells of the retina. Then the second, actually in the next stage, the electrons that carry the impulse through nerve tissue from eye to the brain. The quantum receptors in the brain, and the last one is the non-quantum receptors of the consciousness. That is, there is something non-physical. So, is it so? And the point of their analysis is that since they do not exist, electrons and photons do not exist till we perform an experiment, it means that actually what they say is infinite descent. If we just go on actually in the future, step by step through what is known as this cascade process, then ultimately we will end up with something which is non-physical as per this experiment. This is a very important conclusion. And they have given this diagram also to explain these 7 states. So actually what it says, consciousness has to be non-physical. None of the quanta, photon, electrons exist till observed by some receptor. And these neurons and synapses, do not exist till they impact something receptor in a measurable way. And there are primary receptor, and there is what is known as infinite descent. That is, infinite descent means you are continuously just actually going further and further. So ultimately you will end up with a non-physical entity. So that is very important. And I should tell you that this RAS Arizona conference which I have attended, there were some interesting papers actually where scientists have said that there is a very strong possibility that and this non-physical consciousness exists and it has huge information. There were, I think, 2 or 3 papers of this type. So there is a very strong reason behind it. So now I come to this TDVP model. So now this is actually known as triadic dimensional distinction vertical paradigm model. Triadic means three, and dimensional means dimensions like dimensions in space and one dimension in time. So this, three dimensions in space and one dimension of time, or four dimensions, that is 3s1t. And distinction, this is a very important term which they have introduced, and this I will explain in detail. This is a very, very profound concept. Uh, Distinction means something to distinguish from something else. And this is being done in all the disciplines. Everywhere it is done. So this is a very common factor and a very new concept. Vertical means, it means a motion like that of a vortex, that is motion about two axes. So that is also they have recognized as I mean uh, a basic foundation of the reality. And I should tell you that recently I heard one lecture of Professor Mohanty, and he has done some analysis using this quarks and gluons. They have studied, and he has also concluded that vortex is a very fundamental entity at a very basic level. So this is agreeing with this. Now I will try to explain this concept of three. Uh, Actually, why this called triad? So actually, this concept of three is involved here. So I will try to explain this. Now we know that in Pythagoras theorem, we have this 3 square plus 4 square is equal to 5 square. So areas can be combined for 2 squares, for example, of length 3 and 4 units, giving rise to an area of 5 units. Then volume of two spheres can be combined like 4 by 3, this pi into Ra cube plus 4 by 3 pi Rb cube is equal to 4 by 3 pi into say Rc cube. Then we said that Ra cube plus Rb cube is equal to Rc cube. Now it can work for general real values, but no solution of this is possible if R are integer numbers. That is, if R is integer, then there is no solution for this type of equation. So this is called this is known as the Fermat's last theorem. So hence three minimum units are required to combine to form a new particle. Now, why this is so, let me go to the next thing. So Fermat's last theorem was that it is not possible to have an integral solution of the equation x cube plus y cube plus z cube. Cannot have a solution with all three as integer. But x cube plus y cube plus z cube is equal to p cube can have an integral solution. So this is a very profound concept, and this has been used by these scientists to explain that why three quarks are required actually. So they are going for a concept of addition of volumes. So here in this case, for example, we have 3 cube plus 4 cube plus 5 cube is equal to 6 cube. That is 27 plus 64 plus 125 is equal to 216. So now neutrons and protons are made of three quarks, two top quarks and one down quark in case of proton, and two down quarks and one up quark in case of neutron. So why this number is 3 is there? So they have given lot of importance to this number. So basic is their concept. So now, and now how they have introduced consciousness in a scientific way in their formalism. Actually, this I would like to explain you. Actually, before I go further. So what they have done is here in this table, rest masses of constituents of hydrogen atom, that is proton, two quarks and electron, and their normalized rest masses are given. So for example, for up quark, this rest mass is 2.01 MeV upon C square. For down quark, it is 4.79 MeV upon C square. And for electron, it is 0.51 MeV upon C square. So what they have done is they have divided the rest mass of up quark by the rest mass of electron, and the rest mass of the down quark has been divided by the rest mass of the electron, and the resulting thing has been brought nearer to the integer. So the normalized rest mass for up quark is 4, and the normalized rest mass for the down quark is 9, and for electron it is 1. So they are being termed as quantum equivalent unit. So for up quark it is 4, for down quark it is 9, and for electron it is 1. Now constituents of up quarks, sorry, uh, uh, so if we take proton for example, then it has 2 up quarks. Okay, so this total rest mass will be 8 in actually in terms of this quantum equivalent unit, and for this down quark it is 1. So this total this normalized rest mass will be sorry, this will be 9. Just a minute. Uh, yeah, and for electron it is 1. So the total rest mass of hydrogen will be 18. Total rest mass for the hydrogen will be 18. So I mean that is how it is explained. Now just let me go to the second table. Now here you see that now since that I mean, that equation of these 3 cubes should be satisfied here. So if we take proton, for example, and then this proton, if we talk of say up quark, so they call it up quark 1 and up quark 2. For up quark, now this is some kind of, I should say, some kind of reverse computation. So for up quark 1, for example, this mass is 4. I mean, that is normalized, this mass is 4. So what they do is they add 2 into this and they make it 6. So this 2 is what is known as the Gimmel values. So then what happens if you take another quark, then this is up quark 2, then they add a value of 4 to this original normalized mass of 4. So they get a number 8. And then for the down quark, that is this charge is -1, but this normalized mass is 9. So they add a value of 1 to make it 10. Now if we cube, actually if we find out the cube of 6, then it is 216. If we find cube of 8, it is 512. And if we take this cube of 10, it is 1000. And if we add these three, then we get a number of 1728. So whose square root will be this 24. Uh, Now, so its square root will, its cube root will be there, which will be integer. So actually that is the whole point. So when we add these three, then we get some kind of, I mean, a perspective of adding the volumes of the 3 quark to get the total, say this proton. So this we get 1728. But in the next I mean, a similar thing they have done for neutron. So here they are calling is up quark 3. So in this up quark 3, they have added a Gimmel value of 5. So 4 plus 5 is equal to 9. Then for the second one, that is the down quark 2, they have added a Gimmel value of 3. Actually, one can call it something like something like this quasi particle we use in. So here the quasi particle involves this value of Gimmel, and then there is what is known as down this quark third. So there we add 6 this quantity of Gimmel to 9, and we get 15. Now here if we take the cube value of 9, 12, and 15, and we add up, then for 9 we get 216, for 12 we get 1728, and for 15 we get 3375, and then we get this total value as this 5832, so which is multiple of 18, 18, and 18. So there what is happening is that this concept of volumetric addition is given tremendous importance in this whole this model. And these Gimmel values which they are adding to this mass energy, they say that is mass less and energy less, but it corresponds to this consciousness in one way or the other. So, so actually they are now talking of, they have introduced a concept of a 9-dimensional finite quantized reality along with a discrete transfinite and an infinite continuous reality, which is in agreement with requirements generated due to Gödel's incompleteness theorem. So this 3-dimensional of space, 3 dimensions of time, and 3 dimensions of consciousness. So each of these concept has some kind of volumetric character. In the 3D space, we know it is already having this volumetric concept. And then the time also, they say that it has to be uh, actually volumetric in character. And similarly, consciousness also should be have actually this volumetric this character or concept. Then, so three space dimensions are described by real, rational, or irrational numbers. Then three time dimensions are described through three imaginary numbers, and three dimensions of extent of consciousness are described by three complex numbers. That is x plus I y. So here you can see that these three space-time coordinates are there. It is well known. I will not go into the details of this. So any point can be represented in the space by x, y, and z. That is actually which are called the three coordinates of space. Then the space is now what they say. Space is contained in time, and space and time are both contained in the consciousness. That is something. An assumption which they make. So now, actually, why do we need this? Three dimensions of time. They say that time is assumed to be three dimensional. One dimension corresponds to physical time. Second time dimension is required to explain pre-recognition, which is well established now scientifically. Uh, there is more than 6 sigma. There is over a billion to one against chance. Then third time dimension is required to explain free will, which every sentient being has. And so time has to be a tube-like structure and not like an ordinary line. That is, the concept they are talking about. Then, so the consciousness has been now therefore mathematically incorporated into science. So consciousness, which discriminates a living being from a non-living being, is a part of the theory. It is introduced as one of the most fundamental part of reality. It is defined in such a way that it is present in all time and at all space, and also is present at all levels, starting from the deepest level of reality. Actually, that is at the sub-quantum level to quantum level, atomic level, and goes up to ordinary physical, astronomical, and cosmological levels. It is a part of human brain or any other sentient brain also, but is much more than that. They have included consciousness in science in a mathematical way. Uh, which is nothing but the greatest breakthrough in science after the Einstein theory of relativity, in which space was combined with time in a mathematical way. So, and the concept of the distinction is very important. Now, three major aspects of consciousness. Extent. Consciousness has extent just like a physical body has extent, which is expressed by three special coordinates x, y, z. Here, the three dimensions are expressed through three complex variables x plus iy, where I is an imaginary number. Then it has consciousness as content. So its contents are meaningful information. Now this concept is there in Jainism also. And then there is an impact. That is, consciousness can have impact on matter, or the other way around, matter can have impact on the consciousness. So these are the three actually basic characteristics of consciousness. So the space, time, and consciousness are tethered. This tethered means actually just in our hand we have these fingers coming out. In the same way, space and time are coming out from consciousness. So space, time, and consciousness are although treated as approximately separate, but are assumed to be tethered together at certain points from an infinite past. This assumption can explain quantum entanglement, parapsychic phenomena, and even singularity at the time of this Big Bang. Now, actually, let me explain this concept of distinction. It is a term unifying all disciplines. It's a very interesting term which I have liked very much actually. Now, actually, distinction is most common element of reality and is used in all walks of life. Two bodies can be either completely identical, they can be completely different, or they may have a situation in between the two. That is, they have some common element and they have some differences also. So distinction means something which distinguishes one thing from the other. So this is being actually defined as a basic entity of this description. So thus we distinguish something from the other, say ourselves from rest of the universe. Aham or myself are different from others, or a red ball from white ball, for example. So this is the meaning of distinction which is used here. Now, we actually require three entities for this, namely a body which is to be distinguished from something else. So D for distinction and F for from. That is, it is actually some A is to say different from B. Then we require this F also, that is from. Actually, it is distinct from other. There this something else, another body, for example, is required an entity which will distinguish the two, say human being or his consciousness, C for consciousness. So some consciousness is required to distinguish. That is, I mean, the person who is doing this distinction. So that is the concept which they have used. So this simple concept has been given a mathematical form using set theory and concept of form, which can be used in any discipline. And a standard notation for this distinction is DFC, that is distinction from, and it is being done by consciousness. So this is, I mean, a basic definition of this DFC. Then they've developed a whole discipline, what is known as calculus of distinction. That is COD, the foundation of TDVP model. I have seen that booklet of them, which is about 175 pages or something like that. And they have developed an abstract mathematics, I should call it, very elegant, very interesting indeed. So I should say it is a, I mean, basic foundation to describe the reality if it is discrete in nature, in contrast to, I mean, the reality which is being handled by say differential equation these days, assuming this to be continuous. So this particular formalism is very interesting indeed, and it should be actually we should work on it further. That is similar but different from the ordinary calculus used in science, used to study reality by treating it as continuous. The physical reality at fundamental level is discrete. This is their major conclusion, that their TDB approach initiates a methodology by assuming the observable reality to be discrete and finite. And I should tell you that again in this conference and in these past proceedings of this conference on consciousness, there are some papers which say that reality is discrete, so we require a different formalism in contrast to the current science, which mostly treat this as a continuum. So this actually there is a need to appreciate this TDVP model in this perspective, in this context. This contrasts with the current scientific methodology which treat reality as continuous. But Napier and Close recognize that this discrete finite is, then again there's another interesting thing, that this discrete finite is embedded in an infinite continuous continuum which is not accessible to an ordinary person. And this again agrees with the Jain concept of Lokakash and Alokakash, which I have discussed later. So content of space-time and content of consciousness domain. So for space-time, the content is energy and mass, and for consciousness, it is meaningful information. That is the contents of consciousness domain, just as in Jainism, where knowledge is an intrinsic property of an Atma. Really, bravery, love, hatred, emotions, perception, and volition, they are also actually being also considered as contents of the consciousness domain. Then this concept of vortices, which is again very important concept. So vortices allow for communication across dimension. Now that is again a very interesting concept. Vortices means it can be anywhere among the 9 dimensions. It is just not these 3 dimensions of X, Y, Z only with which we are familiar, and we talk of vortices in 3 dimensions, but it goes beyond that. They are talking of vortices which can be there among those 9 dimensions. So normally vortices reflect any three-dimensional moving, fluctuating, curved or rotational content within, across or between dimensions, in part because of the asymmetry of the multidimensional content variables in response to linear or rotational forces. Vortices are very commonly found in nature in our 3s1t domain. The interfaces across vortices can be facilitated through biscalar vector or tensor elements. The process is vertical indivention. They have introduced a word indivention for this purpose. So, I mean, this concept of this the vortices are given here through this figure. A simple ball, for example, or this vortices in say in water, for example, or vortices that is with the motion of the earth along two axes. So these are the things. And I just want to tell you, I heard one lecture by actually Professor this Vedant Mohanty just in last month only in PRL, and he was telling that he has done some experiments on mixture of quartz and gluons, and they also indicate. I mean, he has conclusively told that vorticity is a fundamental property at a very basic level. Now, this agrees very well. This actually with this TDVP model. Then orderopy, that is in contrast to entropy. We talk of entropy. So order is the opposite of entropy. So they have introduced a term known as orderopy. So as you saw earlier, we are constantly generating actually by our all these economic activities producing entropy in the atmosphere. So so actually, I mean, they are talking of at this term that is orderopy, which introduces order in the system. So hence there has to be an ordering system in the nature which balances this entropy production so that life processes continue. This demand existence of some kind of ordering mechanism. This is termed as entropy in the TDVP model. Something very interesting again. Then now then this is the very important part of this whole model. So what they say is that lower dimensional feasibility and absent falsification, in short it is termed as LFAF. The current science is based on this Popperian theory of falsification, in which one has to go on rejecting the false results till true results are discovered. Discovery of electric bulb by Thomson, Edison, Alva can be mentioned to understand this, in which thousands of samples were tested and rejected until the right combination was found. Hence, they have introduced a slightly different concept. That is, they have introduced a model known as lower dimensional feasibility and absent falsification, LFAF in short. It means that if there are higher dimensions of reality and they are linked with the lower dimensions in some way through vortices, for example, then what will happen? The recent, actually, this is I have repeated again here, so kindly ignore it. I will just go to the next slide. Sorry. Yeah. So, so some phenomena may be observed in the lower dimensions. These are lower dimensional reality also, and so they are feasible. But they may occur rarely, and so they cannot be proved as false. But since they are occurring rarely, so they cannot be repeated again and again at different places and times, a condition for them to fall in the realm of the modern science. Many of the parapsychic phenomena falls in this category. So they cannot be treated as scientific in the current definition of the modern science, which is based on three-dimensional space and one dimension of time. Thus, TDVP is an extension of the modern science. However, if one can access these higher dimensions through, say, deep meditation and other practices or any other procedure, then events may occur more regularly. That is in the higher dimensions. So, in the lower dimensions, they may sometime appear actually, but they may be just, I mean, rarely. So, this is the way they have tried to explain it. I mean, then truth is therefore relative. Now this is in agreement with Jainism. Actually, they talk about this partial truth and anekantvad. So as the number of dimensions used by an individual is not fixed and varies with time and state of consciousness, and the degrees of truth experienced is also relative and not absolute. It is similar to relative truth or shadvad and anekantvad or even nayavad. So one has to understand that. Then discrete units in TDP model and Pradeshas in general. Now here I am just giving the comparison between the two concepts now, the TDPP model and Jainism. So in Jainism we talk of Pradeshas, and here they are talking of this discrete unit. So they have given different names to these different units for consciousness, time, and space. So that they are talking of the foundation of TDP model is based on discrete nature quantum at every fundamental level of reality. And they talk of discrete structures of space, time, and consciousness, namely qubits for space, that is, which is equivalent to pradeshas of akasha in Jainism. Then this conceits for time like samaya in Jainism. Then this conceits for consciousness like atma pradesha. So they are also talking of this. So there is a lot of similarity between the two systems. Then, however, this finite discrete reality is embedded in an infinite continuum. Now, this is idea is again close to the concept of lokakas being surrounded by this ananta, the alokakas. So that is something again. I mean, there is a lot of agreement. Then they say that consciousness is present in all forms of physical systems. Its implication will be TDVP model assumes presence of consciousness in all forms of matter. As per Jainism, following systems also have life. So, for example, the earthly bodies, that is Prithvi Kai, Vayu Kai, Up Kai, Vanaspati Kai, and Agni Kai. So, these earthly bodies like soil and those things, air, water, agricultural system, Agni, fire also has some kind of consciousness. So, as per this TDVP model, also, the whole type of matter can have be in association with consciousness or some kind of thing. And I should tell you that in this conference, there was one very interesting paper by one scientist. I'm forgetting his name. He has also demonstrated this experimentally that these substances like earth and they have some kind of consciousness, and they have actually he has established through experimental procedure. That was a very interesting paper. I think I will share with you later. Then existence of life without physical. Yeah. So in the modern science, all life forms have certain physical support systems like human bodies. They are controlled by DNA, RNA, and other such molecules which have information inbuilt in them. However, in TDVP model, consciousness can exist without any support of matter also. Hence, life is possible without DNA and RNA. Hence, the concept of Devi Devta, which we believe in our culture, might be existing without any physical body. It is best very much possible. I mean, that is what it looks like. Some of them maybe this exaggeration from my side or overstatement, but I feel that some interesting similarities there between the two models. Now, there is no existence of God in TDVP and Jainism. There is no concept of God in Jainism. The whole universe runs on its own set of rules. It consists of six substances which govern all aspects of the universe, that is both living and non-living beings. In the same way, there is no concept of God in the TDVP model, that is mass, energy, space, time, and consciousness, and Gimal govern all functions of the universe. And existence of Karman Sharir, Vakriya Sharir, and this may be little over exaggeration, but this is possible as matter and energy are associated with the consciousness, hence Karman, Vakriya, and Aharak Sharir are quite possible within the TDVP model. Similarly, this Karma doctrine is explainable within the TDVP model as matter is distinct from consciousness. So matter will follow, this causal laws. Then concept of telepathy and clairvoyance. Uh, as consciousness is present in TDVP model and it results into possibility of existence of parapsychic phenomena which are beyond the boundaries of space and time, but are due to correlation at very fundamental level, quantum entanglement. So it is very much possible that this parapsychic phenomena like telepathy and clairvoyance exist, which are being talked about in detail in Jainism, and they are being discussed here in the TDVP model also. So there is a, common element here also. Then knowledge and evolution in TDVP model and in Jainism. In Jainism, evolution of consciousness is extensively talked about. This evolution is accomplished within decrease, actually with decrease in quantity of matter, karmas associated with the soul, and increase in the knowledge content of the soul. The evolution is such that the soul becomes more and more pure at every stage of 14 stages of evolution, which are known as Gunasthana. Similar case is possible in the TDVP model. That is, as this become actually get detached from matter, it can evolve. So actually, finally, I will just end it with these three slides. The comparison between TDVP and Jainism. So TDVP on the left side and Jainism on the right side. There is no God, there is no God. Finite universe is discrete but an infinite one embeds it. That is in TDVP model. Finite Lokakas has an infinite Alokakas around it. Then space is discrete in TDVP model. Akash has discrete Pradeshas. Then clairvoyance and telepathy can be explained using the TDVP model. Avdi Gyan and Manparya Gyan are real. Then this concept of distinction is common to all fields. Then the concept of Parya is common everywhere. Although they are not exactly equivalent, but I feel that a concept of Parya and oscillation type of thing also actually correspond to some kind of distinction. Then consciousness is different from matter and energy here in TDVP model. Here in Jainism also Jivastika is different from matter, that is Pudgal. And consciousness uh, is non-local and has infinite information. In the TDVP model, it is possible. Then consciousness can expand and contract and has infinite knowledge. Then the second, the vertical motions are there for objects in different dimensions. This Parmanus have different types of motions which are described in Jainism. Then consciousness is associated with all types of matter in TDVP model. Prathvikaya, Vayukaya, the Apa, Agni, and Vanaspati all have some type of life. Then this Gimal is a non-physical entity with no mass and no energy in 3s1t dimension. Dharmastika and Adharmastika are different from Pudgal and Diva, but I think they are also non-physical. So maybe that we should explore the connection between Gimal and Dharmastika and Adharmastika, which actually correspond to this medium of rest and medium of this motion. Sorry, the reverse. That evolution of consciousness is possible and is different from Darwin's principle. Evolution of Jiva through 14 Gunisthanas is possible with increasing knowledge. Then as one evolves, Ordropy builds up. As one evolves through Gunisthanas, knowledge increases. So there is some similarity. One can has actually said that this order corresponds to knowledge or something like that. And then this is the last slide. Matter can be associated with consciousness. Karman, Vakri, Aharak, Sharir are possible. Also, karma can be associated with Atma. So then consciousness can influence matter energy in different ways. It is little controversial. But in Jainism, we talk of labdhis and siddhis, which are possible where soul, not actually soul, but soul plus matter can influence matter. Actually, we have to just clarify it further. Then consciousness can exist without matter, DNA, RNA. Also, Devi Devta may not carry any physical body. These possibilities are there. Teacher and extensive discussion of different type of Devi Devtas are there in Jainism, which could not be ignored. I would say, matlab. So I will not cover this part. I will just end up here only. Their mysticism can be explained using higher dimensions. Many mysteries processes exist which are found during higher stages of Jiva in higher Gunisthanas also. So this I think can be explained. So I don't know what is the time. Uh, I think I will stop here and probably I will just cover this other part afterwards, maybe in some second lecture. There is something more extensive discussion is there about the application of this model. So thank you very much.
So thank you, Pokharna sahab. Enormous number of new ideas. Every time I listen
Thank
to
you,
you
sir.
on this topic, I
Yeah,
find a large number of new ideas, and you have tried to show us
Thank you.
that there is a lot of parallelism between Jainism and TDVP model. So actually, I should invite the questions